Hello again. Welcome to Change is Good. This is Brian. We recently did a 7-box 2-night live stream $half hunt. It took 2 nights to go through 7 boxes, 7,000 half dollars, $3,500 face value. Looking for silver proofs, NIFCs. I did not scope anything except for a few RPM checks during that hunt. It took me a majority of the weekend to get all those coins scoped because as I went, I stacked them all by year, by what I wanted to scope. And it took hours and hours and hours. It took a long time. I finally got done with it last night late, and I'm doing a recap of what I found. In total, I found 40 varieties that I'm certain of. There were 39 DDO and DDRs, and I found 1 RPM. Before I cover them, I'm going to show you some of the minor mint errors I found. If you ever look through 71 Denvers, there are some things you can look on this coin. This is a special year. There are a couple extra things you look for besides the varieties. You can look for precuts like this one. Now, I usually find better examples than this, but this was the best one I found out of that entire hunt. If you look above the Y there, you'll see a die crack running rim to rim. It's kind of minor, but that was the most obvious one that I could find. It's cool to find. Sometimes they actually sell for a few bucks. Just something to look out for if you're hunting. Like I said, those are minor, and they're not really that rare, but they're out there. And something kind of interesting I've been noticing lately on these other 71s, I didn't start looking for these until recently, but there's some really cool die clashes you can find in front of the Kennedy's nose here, if you can see that. I'll try to focus that a little better, a little more obvious. You can see those clash marks right above his bridge of his nose there. Sometimes there'll be even more than that. Sometimes there'll actually be some. You can see some of the eagle feathers right in front of his hair there. Sometimes those feather lines will run all the way down in front of the face. That's part of the reverse design on the obverse of the coin. And these actually do have more value than face, considerably. Like an example like this in a circulated condition can sell for $30, $40. I think one recently sold for around $28 in comparable condition to that one. People look for this stuff. There's actually also some die clash you can find on the reverse too, which is really cool, especially on uncirculated examples that haven't been polished. Most of the time, those die classes are all polished off. Next, we've got 73 Denver. Now, I don't think anybody ever looks for these. I do because I like them. This is a 71 Denver with a die gouge going right through the R in the word trust. Okay, if you can see that. There's only one die that had this gouge on it like this. I do look for these because I think they're cool and they're unique. Here's another example. You know you've got it when you have a little bump on the back side of the R. When I first found these, I thought they were damaged. Then the next box, I found another one just like it. It's a little die gouge right there. It's like the R got stabbed with a knife. Pretty cool. I don't know if these have any extra value, but I like to keep them. I think I have about a roll worth or more of them now. So this is minor stuff. I also found a 1972 Denver with a big die crack on the back of it, right through the S right here. Pretty cool find. I definitely pulled that one out of circulation. It'll have a little bit extra value to a collector. I also have another 72D here. 72D seemed to be the year for mint errors during that hunt. This one has a bit of a grease strike right in the S in States. That's when the die got filled with dirty grease and gunk and stuff and kind of removed the lettering right there. Just that one letter. Pretty cool. It's a minor mint error, but it's definitely worth pulling out of circulation. Okay, now I'm going to get to the varieties. I do have examples of every year, 71 through 84, that are not double dies so that you can see what I'm looking for in comparison. The first I'm going to cover is the 1971 Philadelphia DDO-001. This is a very scarce double die. I actually found 2 of them in this hunt, I think one after the other within 2 boxes. They're pretty scarce. They are not common. They're not worth a lot of money because they are a minor variety technically, but you'll look mainly at the word trust And you'll see some extra width toward the bottom and some kind of angled serifs at the top of the U. And of course, the right-hand side of the T is going to be really, really wide in comparison. I'm just going to give you an example of what a normal one looks like. That's what a normal truss looks like. See the top of these flat. The R is not really wide on the right-hand side. This one's a lot different. And if you go to the T here at the top, the T is really, really wide, and the serifs are flat on the both left and right-hand side. There's also a little notch right there at the top of the both serifs of the E. Both forks of the E have a little notch in them. Here's another example. I found two of these. This actually shows the splitting. You can see the splitting at the bottom of the R. The top of the U's got some splitting. That the T's got, it's supposed to be a notch there, but it's kind of worn. And the T's really wide. A little notch there on the top of the E. This will give you an example of what the T was supposed to look like. That's a regular T versus the DDO T. That was a cool find. We also found 171 Philadelphia DDR #1. There's only one example on Variety Vista that I know of. This one is kind of hard to tell. What you look for is this bottom serifs of the S. But right there at the bottom where the point comes up on both S's. If it's sharp, it's not the double die. If it's rounded and it has some splitting in it, this example does have some splitting. Turn it around and just angle a little bit, you can see it right there. When you have that and some extra width, just to give you a comparison, see how the S serifs are pointed at the bottom? That's not a variety. There's also another way to tell. When you take these and you can tilt them and look at the bottom upper corners of the E right there. There's a little notch right there. Right there. You can see that? And it's actually supposed to be on all serifs up and down. This is a little bit damaged down here, so it's hard to see it. You also find it on the F as well. Little splits. And you'll see a little split in the R right there. If you can see it right there. That little split right there is another sign you have the variety. You can see the notch pretty clearly right there. There's another one supposed to be right there, but it's kind of worn off. This is a tough variety to find, but if you get used to it, what you're looking for, you can see it. Now we're going to go to 71 Denvers. This is an RPM. You can kind of see them plain as day. This one is one of the most obvious RPMs you can find. On all half hours, to my opinion, it's the most obvious RPM. You can see how there's two Ds stamped inside of each other right there. It's always really flat here on the left-hand side. It's never really indented in at all. It's just flat. That is RPM #1. There are, I believe, 3 you can find, but that's just the first one. I find more of those than anything. We also have a FS-101s coming up, major variety, but if you want to see a regular mint mark, that's a regular Denver mint mark right there. Now we have the FS-101s coming up. This is a major variety. They're kind of hard to tell between a few other varieties. 71 Denver has 17 known varieties, just double-dyed obverses, and some of them are very, very similar. This is the one you want to find. The way to tell this one, there are really 2 major ways to tell it. One is look at the I in God. The I will not have any extra splits or extra width to it. It's going to be like a regular letter. When you come over here, you're going to find the splits. You can see that on this one. It's a little bit warm, but you can see, especially at the top of the U on the right, you can see that splitting pretty plain as day. The T is going to be a little bit wider with a really wide right-hand serif here at the top. That top point is going to be wider. And the E will sometimes have a notch in it here at the middle of the fork right there on the bottom half. It's kind of hard to see it on this one. It doesn't really have it. They don't always have it, especially on later die states. Of course, the main way, like I said, is to check the I and then look at the Denver mint mark and see, compare it where it's placed on the website versus the other varieties. These will all have the regular I's, the Denver mint mark in the same place, and split serifs on the bottom of the R and the top of the U. And of course, some of the other lettering will have it too, but it's hard to see it when they're worn. See the splitting in the T up there on the right hand side especially, a little bit on the left too. And the E will sometimes have splits. That one doesn't have it either. Regular I, no extra splitting in it. Different mint marker in the same place. Splitting at the top of the U and the bottom of the R. Wide T, right hand side wider than the left hand side. This has a little bit of splitting there at the bottom of the E, but it's really hard to see it. That's the major variety. This next one's very easily can confuse it. Well, this is the other major variety. This is the FS-102. This one has the I as the most obvious feature. See this double splitting on the left and right hand side of the I? Now when these are worn, they're really hard to tell. I found 5 of these. So you can see the difference. Plus the 1 is really wide in the date, and the 9's a little bit of extra width to it also. And to see the really, really wide trust, there, that's another sign you have one. That I is the N, they're splitting on the N too, but the I is that's the key feature on this coin. Extra width on trust right there. And the left-hand side of the T on this one's got really, really wide, a lot of width to it, some extra splitting. It's the only variety that has that kind of wide splitting to it, except for, I believe, the double I number 17, which is very similar. But I found 5 of these. These are a few more examples of them right here. This is the more worn, but you can still see the splitting. And the truss is also a little bit wider than normal, but it's worn, so it's later die state. It's kind of hard to tell. There's another example. You can see how it's a little bit of splitting on the left and right hand side of the R there, or the I. The lettering is also a little bit thicker. You can see a little notch on the far right hand side of the T there. And the T is a little bit, not quite as thick, but it's got that big flat spot on the left hand side. Those are just a few examples of the FS-102. That's also a major variety. Now the next one is double die number 7. Oh, just to give you a comparison. Here's the last variety. That's a regular coin. I'll cover this a little bit as we go. No splits, normal width, just regular. T's regular. This has a little bit of splitting on the left-hand side of the syrup, but that's normal. That's regular. This is double die number 7. This is a really tough one to tell too. It's got a very similar eye as the FS-101, but the mint mark's placed a lot closer to the bust, or the neckline. It's got some splitting here in the letters. It's hard to see it on this example because it is kind of worn. But the T has the same width as the FS-101. Similar look to it. And there'll be some notching here in the bottom of the E. This one's hard to see it, but if I get it just right, you might be able to see it. You can kind of see it right there. There's a notch there. It's kind of weak. But that's the most similar variety to the FS-101. Here's the one that's not similar. This one has a different reverse lettering design to it. It's got the design from 1964 coins on it, in the 60s design. This is the one of 2 die designs that have this extreme splitting, that have the eye, like a different kind of eye. You can see the difference right here. Putting the die designs. I forgot, it's RDD double number 1, I think it is. But you can see the splitting in this one is really, really, really obvious. This is a late die state too. This is a very, very late die state. It's very weakly struck. But look at the splitting. The right-hand side of the T is going to be really, really wide. And there's usually a big notch on the E, which you can see right there. Right above my fingertip right there. A big notch right there. This is double die number 9. This is easy to confuse with double die number 16. Which the splitting on it's a little bit lower than the 9. That's the main way to tell it. Now we have double die number 13. This is a little more easy to distinguish. The eye has got some extra splits to it on the top and bottom left-hand side and the top right. Extra width at the end god. Just a little bit extra width. It's got splitting. It looks a lot like the FS-101 on this side. A lot of people confuse this variety. And this is really easy to confuse, but it's actually a different die. Because the FS-101 does not have an eye that looks like this. This is a completely different die, and the mint mark's a little bit further away from the neckline there. But you can see the splits in this one really obviously. This is a good example. The T is similar to the FS-101, But there's a big notch right there in the E. You can see it right there. Big, obvious notch. Here's another example. I found 3 of these in this hunt. This is a little beat up, but it's the same die. Same splits. You can see the bottom of the R right there and the top of the U. Same T design. Extra width on both, especially on both serifs at the top right and left. This is a little more weakly struck, but you can see the notch right there. Here's a third example. This is a little more worn and beat up. It's hard to tell it. It looks a little different than the other one, but the mint mark is in the right spot. So this one's hard to tell. I thought it was the FS-101 or the double under 14, but it's actually the 13. It's just got a kind of a beat up eye there, kind of weakly struck. Same splitting over here. Same T. A little weakly struck with a notch in it. A little notch right there in the E. Kind of weak on this one example though. I think that's a 13. Here's the 14. Could be the 14 here, but the mint mark's in the wrong spot. This is the 14. This is also very easy to confuse with the FS-101. This one doesn't have any splits anywhere except for some extra width here on the T. The right hand side is the key to this one. It's got a little bit of split. You can see a split right there on the U. You can see one of them. Actually, you can see 2 of them right there. And it should have a little notch here on the E also. You can just now barely see it. Right there. There were 2 examples of that found. That's double number 14. Number 7, 14, and 13 are easy to confuse with FS-101. They're the most obvious. Just to give you a recap of what a regular one looks like. This is a regular 71D right here. When you're looking at these varieties, or looking for these varieties, the key places to look on 71 Denvers are here, the letter I. That's how you tell which variety you have most of the time. Of course, the splitting and truss especially, the letter T, and look at the E. The E is a key area. That area sometimes is the only place you'll see a notch, because the weakly struck later stage dies won't have any splits in them sometimes. And you look at the T and you won't know. When you look at the E, that's your key sometimes to knowing you have a variety. Now we're on to 1972s. Here we have 1972P double die reverse number 1. I found 4 of these in this hunt. Look at the bottom of the S right there. Just like the last 1971 P double die, this is even wider. You'll see some really extra width right there. This one's a lot wider here. This bottom serif of the S. If you turn it upside down, you tilt it up. Usually you'll find some notches. There's a notch right there in that E. Notch right there in the bottom of that E. And a little bit of a notch in the R, it looks like. They're tough to tell it. You can also see some splitting on them usually. This is a little bit warm, but you can see a little bit of split serif from the right there on that S right there. It's another example. A little bit of splitting right there. This one has the notching. Little notch right there in the E. You can barely see it. One right there. That one's hard to see it too. But this is another example. Here's another one. Really, really wide S serifs. Kind of get the idea. Plus the letter, of course all the letters are a little bit thicker too. A normal one looks like this. So compare that, the letters S and states, and the letters, of course all the other letters as well, to this one. You can see the obvious difference. When you get used to this, they're really obvious. That's on the Philadelphia coins. On the Denvers, there are a couple double dot reverses too that you can find. There are two different ones, and they're actually pretty easy to tell. All right, next variety is going to be the 72 Denver DDO #1. That's what it looks like right here. Looks kind of like the FS-101 on the 71s as far as the splitting goes. Look at the bottom of the R, the top of the U. A regular 72, when you don't drop them, looks like this. So the letters are thinner, no splitting. Compare that with this. The thickness of the letters over here. Compare with that, with the splits. That's a double die #1. There's only one DDO on this year. Here's another example. Kind of a worn, beat up example, but you can see the extra width and the split serifs in this one. Also extra width. A little bit of split serifs on this one too. You can see them. Found 5 of these in total. And now we've got double die reverses. This is a tough one to find. Same principle on this one. You look at the bottom of the S's on these. You'll see big wide serifs. Look at the S, look at the letters, especially the bottom of the S and states right here. How thick they are and how thick the letters are compared to that one. Very, very obvious difference in these. These two coins right here are double die reverse #1. Actually, that might be #2. No. Actually, that's actually #2, which is this one. I kind of mix those up a little bit. This is #1 as well. I put it in the wrong spot. Well, this is double die to reverse #1, this one and this one. And this is double die reverse #2. The splitting in this one's not as obvious, but there's a little bit extra thickness in the bottom serifs of the S. And there's some notches in the same places as the other coins. Hard to tell it, but you can see it on some of these sometimes. This angle, it's hard to see it, but you can see the split serif right there on that S. There's a notch right there. You can see it right there. And that E. All right. Those are the 72s. All right. Double die reverse on 73 Philadelphia's now. Same principle on these. Wide serifs at the bottom of the S. That's how you tell the difference on these. You can also see a split right there in the S. There are 2 of these varieties. Is #1 and #2. This is #2. You can see the splitting on the states right there. The serif splitting on the #1 is actually more centered. This is a little bit more to the inside. Got the same thing. You can see that. You can even see the notch in the F right there on this one. This example right here. And so split and some notching in the E, all letting down. Bottom, middle, and top serifs. You can see that notch. And the R has a notch at the bottom of it as well. There's a nice good split coming up the serif right there. This is double die #2. #1 is a little bit different, but very similar. Same as that coin here. Same die. You can see the splitting on this one a little bit on the S right there. It's toward the inside a little bit. There's a little notch there on the F. You can see it right there. And this one's kind of hard to see, but you can see a split right there. And, yep, notch all the way up on top. Bottom, middle, and top of the S right there. Hard to see the top one, but it's there. And that split right there in the serif. I recommend learning how to tilt your coins in a scope so you can see what you got. It's very hard to tell the varieties without tilting them sometimes. Now we're off to 73 Denver. This is a major variety, FS-101. This one's obvious. Found 2 of these during the hunt. You can see the words in God are really, really thick. Some splitting in the 1 and the 9, really obviously. A notch right there in the bottom of the 3, in the center, and the top. And the obvious splitting here on the letters. The S is one of the most obvious parts of this coin. Found 2 of these in the hunt. These are a really good variety to find, really fun one to find. And next we've got a 1974 Denver. This is one of the big dogs here. This is a major variety as well. Really obvious when you find them. If you can't see those splits, I don't know what to tell you. Just to give you a comparison, a regular 74 looks like this versus this. Extremely wide in God. I mean, look at the comparison. So much difference here. The letter I has got some major splitting up. The 9, the 4 has got a big notch in the back of it. Right there. These are really, really obvious. I'll give you an example of the 73. I'll go back. Let me go back just for a second. You can see this regular 73. It looks very similar to the 74. Same splitting and everything, but compare that with this. You can see the difference, especially in the S. But that's the 73 and 74s. These are a really fun variety to find. There's, of course, other places to look on this coin. Like up here at the T, all the letters are super wide on this coin. But you don't really have to look anywhere else, but really just reach rest on this one. It's really obvious. And the next one is also a major variety. I almost never find these. These are super, super scarce. It's a 77 Denver DDO FS-101. These are really tough to find because you don't find many 77 Denvers in your boxes. But here's what it looks like. It's got extra thickness on in God. Letter 1 is really thick with a split on the left-hand side going up it. Same with the 9. It's really, really wide with a split on the left-hand side. The lettering on the other side is also split. You can see the splits there. Look at the S. You can see the splitting. The U's got splits up it. The R. You can really see it right there. Compare this to a regular version. That's what it looks like. A regular one looks like. No splitting. Letters are thin. It says thicker letters. Thicker date. So splitting over here on the right hand side. You can see the split there on the S, the T, and the U especially toward the top. That's a very scarce variety. It's probably the second most valuable out of the DDOs that have been found on half dollars. Only really worth more money is the 72, which we didn't find, the 72 Philadelphia. But I honestly find more of those than I do of the 77 Denvers. And this last one is one that not many people look for. I found a really good example of it in this hunt. Probably an uncirculated example, at least high AU. But a regular 84 Philadelphia looks like this. Where you will look on this coin is you look here at the top. I look at one place. Well, there's 2 places. I turn the T upside down like this at an angle, and I look at the bottom of it right here. That is normal. That is a regular strike on the T on Liberty. This one looks a lot wider. You can see the splitting. Notice how much different this one is. It's wider at the bottom especially, and there's splits. You can see the extra splitting here from the double letters. And if you go over to the I, because you look at the other ones too, you can see a little bit extra thickness here. But another way to tell is the I has also got the same extra width in the splitting there. You can see it on the right hand or the left hand side on this one. Right there. And if you look at that and you have, it looks like this. probably got one. Sometimes a heavily polished die will look like this too, which is why you always check the mint mark at the bottom. If the mint mark's in the right place, in that position, that's the variety. Almost guaranteed. It's a really cool one to find. Not many people look for it, but this was actually in really good condition. But that's it. Really good coins, really good hunt. Found quite a few varieties. It took forever to find them, but we did find them. Hope you enjoyed the video. If you have any questions or comments, just make a comment, and you have a good one. I'll see you next time.